Welcome to Despierta Mexico. Today we have 4 guests to talk to us about the Latin American theology. Let me introduce our guests. This is Juan Luis II, Gustavo Gutierrez, Jose Miranda, and lastly, John Sobrino. These 4 inspiration theologians help with the transformation of theology in Latin America known as liberation of theology. They oppose the corrupt militaristic government in Latin America, particularly in El Salvador, and champion the rights of the oppressed lower class. This theology is rooted in Christian beliefs, however, it is widely diverse. Can each of you tell us a little bit about your background? Let's start with Gustavo.
Lo que siento por ti es ternura y pasión. Tú me has hecho sentir.
Well, I was born in Lima, Peru in 1928, and I studied there at San Marcos University Medical School. And that's when I became interested in psychiatry, but after that I felt drawn to the church and was ordained as a priest. Once I had seen the pain of discrimination and poverty, I felt like I needed to become more political to help those people. I wrote A Theology of Liberation in 1973, which criticizes the unjust social hierarchy in Latin America.
I have heard that you are the father of Latin American theology. Is that true?
I have had a major part in this movement, but you should hear what some of the others have done to contribute. My friend Juan has helped a lot.
I was born in Montevideo, Uruguay in 1925. I was ordained in 1955 as a Jesuit priest. I wrote several books on theology that criticized the oppression and suffering of the Latin American lower class. In addition, I traveled through Brazil, Canada, and the U.S. giving lectures and brief teaching lessons.
You live an interesting life. How about you, Jose?
I have spent a lot of my time advocating for my belief that Marxism and Christianity are connected. My first book, Marx and the Bible, a critique of the philosophy of oppression, gave my headway in this Latin American theology movement. I just really believe that these 2 ways of life have similar teachings that pertain to this theology.
And last but certainly not least, John.
I entered the Jesuit order when I was just 18 years old. Later, I was ordained a Jesuit Catholic priest. In 1958, I was sent to El Salvador to help as a Jesuit. I returned later to teach at a University of Central America. I was almost a victim of the brutal militarist military in El Salvador. As a Jesuit, I was a target because we speak out against the injustices in the country. I actively participate in protests, including against the School of the Americas in Fort Benning, Georgia. I strongly disagree with the militaristic techniques being taught to young men. I am a passionate advocate for peace.
It is so good to hear about all your past and how you got involved in Latin American theology. I just have a couple questions to ask each of you. Gustavo, what would you say to someone who disregards liberation theology and your beliefs about the oppressed?
As I wrote in one of my books, the poor person does not exist as an inescapable fact of destiny. His or her existence is not politically neutral, and it is not ethically innocent. The poor are a byproduct of the system in which we live and for which we are responsible. They are marginalized by our social and cultural world. They are the oppressed, exploited proletariat, robbed of the fruit of their labor and despoiled of their humanity. Hence, the poverty of the poor is not a call to generous relief action, but a demand that we go and build a different social order. What I'm really getting at is this: there is no reason for a poor class to exist. Society has simply oppressed these people into miserable circumstances, but no one is meant to be there.
How do you feel about the new Pope?
I'm very excited to have a Pope from Latin America. It means that liberation theology can no longer remain in the shadows for Rome. I actually met with him in early September of this year. I can't tell you what we talked about because it was top secret, but the church seems to have a more open-minded attitude toward liberation theology now.
I don't view it as an academic discipline for scholars. I view it as the reflection of the real-life experiences of ordinary believers. In my book, A Theology for Artisans of a New Humanity, I talk a lot about that. This was produced by and for the grassroots communities of the Peter Faber Center during the late 1960s. I focus on several issues directly related to their daily lives, like the crisis in the church.
What does your work mostly address?
My work mostly addresses specific religious concepts like church, grace, sacraments, and the concept of God, and how these concepts need to be redefined as authentic reflections of grassroots communities.
Interesting. Is there anything else you would like to say?
I just want to point out that Christians and atheists have a lot more in common than most people realize. We all aim for a common good and justice in our societies. I just want to point out that Christians, no matter where they live, cannot avoid political ideologies. I don't mean that they should ally themselves exclusively with Marxist ideology any more than they should accept the ideology of the political status quo.
On the topic of Marxism, Jose, why are you considered the most controversial Latin American advocate?
Well, I believe that we need to look at the similarities between Christianity and Marxism, even though most people would say that Marxism is bad and should not be compared to something as holy as Christianity. But I think a lot of people don't know about the good teachings it espouses. Through my studies of both biblical teachings and Marxist teachings, I have discovered a basic theme, which is that neither will have love without justice, or justice without love. Both of these belief systems understand the vital relationship between love and justice.
How can you draw more connections between the Christian teachings and the Marxist teachings? This might be something that is difficult for a lot of people to swallow.
Yo no imaginaba que conocería algún día este sentir.
I have found similarities between Marx and the Apostle Paul. They both emphasize the totality of evil. They also believe that injustice and sin can be eliminated because selfishness is a fallen condition, not a natural one. The differences lie in the different ideas of the cause of corruption in society. Paul believes it is embedded in earthly principalities and powers, but Marx believes that injustice and sin are consequences of a poor economic system.
What is the arching connection between Marx and Christianity?
The two both understand the importance of eliminating social injustice through the understanding of moral character.
Thank you for your insight. You provide a completely different view of Christianity and our roles in society to help fix the injustice. Without your opinion, Latin American theology would not be the same. John, as a Jesuit priest and a theologian, what was your largest contribution to the world?
I would have to say it was definitely my contribution to liberation theology. I've written numerous books, oftentimes focusing on helping the poor and oppressed, and how it is through history that Christianity starts. We must start with the oppressed, while also paying attention to what Jesus believed in and would have done. Humanization and Christianization are also major themes throughout my writing.
Can you expand on what you mean when you say, what would Jesus have done?
I mean, based off of his beliefs, he would have also believed we need to help the poor in order to achieve peace. He called attention to the coexistence of oppressor and oppressed, and said that there is poverty because the rich will not share their wealth, ignorance because the learned have stolen away the keys to knowledge, and oppression because the Pharisees have imposed intolerable burdens on people, and rulers are acting despotically. For this reason, history is so important, and we must learn from our mistakes.
I agree. The past holds the key to a better future. Now, I would like to open the discussion for everyone. Can you talk about the Third General Conference of the Latin American Episcopate?
The conference was held in Puebla, Mexico on January 28, 1979. At the conference, John Paul II gave an address. This conference is held to listen to the people of the church, to study the meaning of the mission in the face of new demands, together. Each time the conference assembles, we acknowledge how far society has come. The church is a major influence in this improvement. The church always advocates helping the poor and fixing the injustice.
I agree. The church has always helped the people. In El Salvador, the priest investigated the injustice of the military. Oscar Romero was assassinated in 1980 because he tried to help the poor and oppressed in El Salvador. He risked his life to help those who needed help. He was the voice of the people, and he preached the goodwill for everyone to listen. He even helped put together the pictures of family members who were kidnapped. He had a strong voice, he had many followers, and had weekly sermons, which were broadcasted on the radio.
Speaking of men who spoke up against injustice, Father Roy Bourgeois was instrumental in creating an organization against the School of the Americas. He strongly disagrees with the ways of the SOA. His annual protest led to the closure of the school. Unfortunately, it reopened as the Western Hemisphere Institute for Security Cooperation, claiming that the school had changed its ways. But it is clear that the school still teaches military training to Latin Americans. This school is funded and run by the United States government, and it is important for creating foreign relations. And even though the purpose of the school is well-intentioned, it has proved to be destructive. The men trained at the school have returned to their homes and have murdered, raped, and tortured people in their country.
The exact crimes that the Jesuit priests in El Salvador have been trying to reduce. The source of the injustice of Latin America lies in the military force, which runs the government.
Can someone answer why the Vatican's disapproval of the teaching of liberation theology?
Well, when Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger became Pope, he took the name of Pope Benedict XVI. As the Pope, he is the voice for the Church as a whole. The Vatican did not like that liberation theology was being taught, so he closed the seminaries that were teaching it. However, the Latin American people saw this as a progressive step to justice and peace in the country. Rome didn't agree. The teaching strayed too far from the traditional views and values of Christianity.
Does anyone have any last comments?
I think we all need to understand the roots of Christianity are love and justice. We need to help those who are oppressed in order to reach peace.
Because it is important to realize we are all in this together, and that we will never reach the universal goal of peace without working together.
I couldn't agree more. The Jesuit priests in El Salvador are our role models. We need to be everything we can to help promote change.
But we cannot forget the traditional values of Christianity.
It was great to hear from you influential theologians about the liberation theology in Latin America. Unfortunately, this is all the time we have for today. Thanks for listening.
Richie Peña,
Chino y Nacho.
esta canción nació de un pensamiento.
¿Es así?
Y yo solo pienso en ti, mi niña bonita.
Mi amor.
The good teachings it espouses. Through my studies of both biblical teachings and Marxist teachings, I have discovered a basic theme, which is that neither will have love without justice.
That's fine.
Is it running? But I think a lot of people don't. But I don't think a lot of people. Oh my God.
These make for good bloopers, so it's okay.
Oh God. But
No matter where they live, cannot avoid political ideologies. I don't mean that they should ally themselves unequivocally.
Oh my God, that's a terrible word.
How do I pronounce that?
Unequivocally, it's spelled wrong.
Unequivocally. Okay, I'm going to start this thing over.
You start the sentence over.
I just want to point out that all Christians and atheists have a lot more in common than people realize. We all aim for a common good and justice in our societies. I also want to point out that Christians, no matter where they live, cannot avoid political ideologies. I don't mean that they should ally themselves unequivocally with Marxist ideology any more than they should accept the ideology of the political status quo. Okay, can I?
¿Cómo te llamas? No, wrong thing.